to the Among Lionhearts podcast, where we dare to have moxie for what matters. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Julia, and we are your new loudmouth, change-making, do-gooder best friends here to embolden you to take more action, risk, and heart towards creating a more just, equitable, and brave world.
If you are looking to build a stronger team for your nonprofit, improve morale for staff and volunteers who contribute to your cause, and also, if you're a creative professional, learn about techniques that will better serve you, then this is the episode for you.
Yeah, we're really excited about this episode. This episode is very near and dear to my heart as a creative professional. When I was a teenager, I had a really, really hard time imagining myself in the working world. I was like, who would want to hire this hot mess? And I had a really hard time thinking like, what in the world I had to offer the world, that they would pay me money and help me live, with what I had to offer. And a lot of that goes back to the fact that a lot of our schooling in small town Utah in the 90s, they really valued memorization, memorizing facts and names and formulas, test taking. That's all based on being able to just memorize things. And that was really something I struggled with, being able to memorize anything kind of factual. I could do a lot of things, I would build things all the time, and I could, think outside of the box. And there were certain subjects I was really good at, but overall, I just really, really struggled because we didn't have all the information that we do now know. And that's being smart and intelligent comes in so many different forms. And one of those forms is creativity. And it's been a really long journey for me to, kind of journey of self-discovery to kind of find my place, in this world and in the working world, and, being a thriving creative person and a thriving professional, and being able to use that creative energy. Because of that, I had to do
having them not feel like opposite things.
Yes. Yeah. And there are so many moments where I was like, I think I might be good at some stuff, I think I might be smart at this one area, and a whole lot of that being put together and stuff, and kind of what led me to marketing. So working in nonprofit marketing really allows me to use my creative energy to do a lot of good in the world, which, has added dopamine for me and stuff like that. And it's just really, really rewarding. And, and it's really challenging in a way that I enjoy. What I would have to say is the most challenging, not in a good way, with being a professional creative, is designing and doing creative work for a lot of people, like you do in a nonprofit organization or in business in general. You usually have to design with a lot of people's approval and a lot of people's ideas. And it's hard enough to design for someone who isn't you, in just one person, let alone designing for a lot of people who have different tastes and they have different ideas of what is beautiful or functional. And also it's really hard to design for people who don't know how to tell you what they want.
Exactly.
Big problem. They're like, oh, make it nice, make it good. That means so many different things.
What does nice and good mean to you?
Yeah. So some of the funny things Michelle and I were talking about is when I would get feedback okay, so your design is a little odd. It's just do you see how it's weird? Do you see how it's weird? I'm not sure why it's weird. Why is it weird, Julia? Why is it weird? I'm like, it's not weird to me. It's not.
I assure you, if I thought it was weird, I wouldn't have brought it.
I know. I cannot interpret what you find weird. I cannot read your mind, and stuff like that. And just so funny how a lot of feedback from non-creatives and stuff in business, they really just don't know how to tell you what they want or to guide you into what they want. And it's actually, it's a major challenge for creative people.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember, being younger, since we've known each other since we were like 8. And I remember seeing you kind of struggle with teachers and with school and the expectations, but I really never understood it. And admittedly, I'm like extremely biased because you were always this amazing creature to me. But I really never understood it because I saw all the ways that you were, absolutely brilliant. And I considered myself to be a smart person. And so I just thought everybody else had it all wrong, clearly. But you've shared with me that, this is kind of continued as you've gotten older. And I'm really always disheartened when you share some of these challenges, because I can see really clearly how the work that you do and the nature being so different from, like, I started out in accounting, and 2 + 2 always equals 4. If you're adding up a ledger and you don't get the answer, you made a mistake, and it's really easy to see. But when you're doing creative work and you're designing for a specific purpose, like I get to see that background. I get to see how much effort and just basically because you were raised in that frame of mind that you were not as smart, or you couldn't do the thing because you couldn't do the memorization. You were always trying so much harder than anybody I knew. So you were always just like really, really reaching for this level of perfection that was going to get you, into the club. And I've seen that, the background of the work, and I've seen that compared to other professionals that I work with. And I know that you always do these deep dives into the purpose, and it's always hard for me to hear when, when people give you hard feedback because, or ineffective feedback, just feedback you can't take because you're just like, I just don't even know what to do with that. Like, it's weird. And for real though, like even in us working together so far in this business, I think that we've struggled with the disconnect between the kind of work that I produce and the kind of work that you produce. And like, I've had to focus on, my way of providing feedback to you and my timing of providing feedback to you. It's definitely different than working with somebody who's not creative. And I attribute so much of that personally to the type of work, and not because, you're some sort of weird alien. I know when we were designing the episode, I kept saying like creatives, and I was just like, that's like,
you're like,
creatives. And you're like, stop objectifying me. Stop calling me creative. I'm a professional. And I was like, all right, we will fix this.
If you got, I know it's kind of funny. You're like, if you've got a creative in your midst, kind of a, kind of an angle. So, I'm like,
this is the creative in her natural habitat.
I know. I was like, creative professionals are valid professionals. That's where we need to kind of come at this and stuff. You don't have a weird creature on your team. You must navigate around. No. It's different kind of validation and stuff. So,
and it's been a challenge, but it's been a kind of one of those fun challenges where the more we level up, the more that we learn about the fact that we have different requirements for feedback, and that you need feedback really early, and even before I'm giving you feedback, you need more direction in if I'm not willing to just let you like run with whatever idea, then I need to be specific about my asks, and so I wanted to pose a question to you, Julia, since you are the creative in our relationship. Why is specialized feedback important when working with creative teams?
Well, okay. So why is it specialized? What was the question again?
Why is specialized feedback important when working with creative teams? Like, why do you need a specialized kind of feedback? Why do we need to make sure that we are catering the form of our feedback to, you and the type of work that you do?
Well, I'd say like the number one thing is that true creative people are creative professionals because they love what they do, and it feels really good to them to like create those things. It's almost like for me anyways, I'm almost have like a compulsion to be creative and stuff like that. And if I don't get some of that creative energy out, like I'm very unhappy and and I'm just not in my best like thriving place and stuff like that. And so even in a professional atmosphere, when I'm creating something as mundane as like, a flyer or, even graphs and stuff like that, I'm still vibing. I still, if I have the creative license, I'm still excited about the work that I'm doing. I'm still excited about coming up with a visual communication for the goals that we need, these designs to do. And like, I feel it in my bones when I'm designing. That is, I don't know how to turn that off. And I have tried as a creative professional, I have tried. And so I have done some things to kind of like work on that a little bit, but try to like separate myself from the artwork a little bit, but like there's no turning that off completely. So all creative work, if it's really done like with heart and comes with a little piece of that creative person, and it does represent them no matter how professional they're being in that part. Creative work, stuff that people haven't done before, like it has pieces of that person in there. It has a lot of heart in there. So you got to be gentle when there's hearts involved, right?
Yeah. And I definitely think that it's not true for all creatives. There are probably some creatives who have no problem churning out work for the sake of work. But I would argue that either those people have success at compartmentalizing, which is a skill. It's not like a natural thing that everybody knows how to do. It is something that you can work on and try to build, but it's definitely like, it's not like some sort of a dysfunction or defect in the person if they don't naturally do that. And when we were doing the research for some of this, we were kind of running into, one of the tricky things about leading creative teams full of creative professionals is that traditional leadership advice will often not work well for you. It won't always work. It's not going to feed the needs the creative team has, and it's not going to help direct you to a place where you're more clear about what you need. Because if you're just using traditional leadership, and the thing here is that work was designed for non-creative people. Work was designed for a certain type of person. It was, our work environment in America is designed, to sync up with our school system, which is there to provide well-behaved factory workers who show up and, punch their clock and produce their amount of cogs and then punch out and go home. And that's often not what creative work even looks like. And I would argue that that's part of the reason why so many creatives are self-employed, is because they really struggle with the constraints of that. And I know there's been a lot of creatives out there who have been able to find success in that space and who've been able to make it. But I think they're probably utilizing some of the techniques that we're going to discuss with you today. So definitely. First of all, that specialized feedback is important when you're working with creatives, because traditional leadership advice can lead you astray.
Yes.
And then if you want to lead us into the second part of some of that research that we did.
If you manage creative teams, here are a few ways you can structure feedback to ensure success. Before meeting with your creative partner, there's a lot of pre-work that you need to do. Majority of the work in giving like really good feedback is in the preparation. If you've got some extensive, not necessarily hard, but hard included, but if you have extensive feedback and stuff like that, you want to really take the time to be thoughtful and kind of check some things off your list to make sure that you're giving the correct kind of feedback that is, you know, going to be beneficial. So so you really want to evaluate the feedback that you think that you're going to offer and kind of put a plan together. And the first step in that is separating your personal taste from the requirements of the design and the goals of the design. Like really, really evaluate that and check that. Take the time to set apart points that are your personal taste and the changes you want to make, so that you know that your creatives solutions for those same goals probably looks different than how you would do it. You know, so it's really good to check that. And with creative work, like, because it's so subjective, there's more than one way to hit those goals, right? Like there's an infinite, that's the problem, is choice overload, right? And definitely to communicate a lot of things, you know, and some of those ways your creative may even be like thinking of ways to solve those things that have never been done before, you know, because that's, you know, important to be doing those kinds of things too, and like breaking down those walls and being innovative. So
I think if you're a manager and you haven't worked kind of in these creative spaces and with people regularly who are creatives and kind of create their output, the stuff that comes out of their work this way, sometimes you forget that in creative work, like you said, you know, there's often not a right or wrong way. There are simply more and less effective ways. And if you can separate yourself from that, first of all, know that you're going to have personal tastes that have nothing to do with whether or not that solution is effective. And you have to really evaluate, if your goal is managing a creative team, then it's important for you to not absolutely squelch the creativity out of those people, because all that will end up is you being dissatisfied all the time and you feeling like you're the only one who can do it right. So if you're accepting that there are just more and less effective ways to do something, then you're not constantly telling people they did it wrong, number one. Number two, you're taking the time to check that personal you know, opinion that you have for this subjective work. The next way that you can structure feedback to make sure that you're successful with your creative professional partners is make sure you're delivering tough feedback verbally. This should always be a meeting or a phone call. Don't rely on emails here, because it needs to be an interactive communication. There's gonna be hiccups in receiving that message or receiving the right part of that message. And there's just, because it's so subjective and because there's so much opportunity there for your personal taste to come in, like your creative needs to hear the nuances there. So make sure that you're delivering tough feedback verbally, and then that you follow it up with a written copy, because that way you can just summarize everything that happened in the meeting. You still have a paper trail. You still have like project check marks that they can look at on a regular basis, and that they can check in with if they're having a hard time receiving the feedback. They can check in with it later and just make sure that they're being objective in receiving that feedback too.
Yeah, absolutely. You also want to try to spend most of your time when you are in the actual process of the feedback, like you're with your creative team and stuff like that. Try to spend majority of the time asking questions and being really curious and like listening, and try to form your first things into questions so you can better understand. Try not to just come in assuming the answers to your questions already. That's going to go over a lot better with your creative team. And it's very inviting too. It's inviting them to the conversation. It's inviting them to kind of rumble and get in there with you, you know, and figure this out as like a team. And they're going to really feel respected when you lead with questions instead of assumptions.
Yeah. I think it's super essential in nonprofits too, because we do tend to work with a lot of people who are new to professionalism at all, much less creative careers. So if you're working with some younger creative workers, just know that they may not have had the opportunity yet to develop their own self-validation. And so they're might be looking to you for quite a bit of validation, and by approaching them with that inquisitiveness, right, you're just automatically kind of assuming that that they have a really professional reason for why they produce what they produce. And if you always start with like, I know you had a good reason for this, like walk me through that reason. What was this about? Why this detail? Why this, why did you choose this? If you're hearing that and they're guiding you through that, you could discover that they solved some of the problems that you didn't even foresee within it. But they're not necessarily, if they're not super experienced, or if they've had a hard time as a professional before they've come to your team, they might not be as outspoken about making sure that, they're heard as a professional. The next point is make sure that you bring a mindset of inspiration and support. Ultimately, your team should leave all meetings, all interactions feeling like you have their back. Even when you have to give tough feedback, try to find a way to bring things back to a supportive and almost cheerleading tone, because creative workers do tend to respond well to leaders who lead from the back, not the guy who's in front who's like, do it this way and only this way and this is the right way. They want to see somebody who's leading from the back who's like, well, what do you think about that? And how did you come up with that idea? Like, people who are less invested in their own ego in their leadership role tend to do better with creative workers. They just respond better.
Yeah, I think that goes a lot along the lines of, I've seen like other creative people when I've, managed creative people, and when I've been managed too in that role, having you ask questions along the line of like, well, what would you do to solve this issue? I love hearing your ideas. You always have like great ideas and stuff, and and not trying to like solve like all those things for them and stuff, but like ask them, help build their like trust in themselves and in their abilities. Like, you're gonna really enjoy that as a manager, to like have that like kind of taken off your shoulders. So like, but they are gonna need like that guidance, and that cheerleader thing, and permission to be
exactly
the creative rock stars. They are, because you hired them in that like role and stuff. So also like keep in mind, like when you start off feedback, start off positive. Like, what good things can you say about this? What good things can you say about like their work or how they handled themselves? If you can't say something about their design or their copy or something that they've written or whatever creative project that they're doing, try to find something to start off that you can point out that they did really, really well. That's just so important. Because they're already nervous. Just assume like this is already difficult for them, that they're trying really hard to be professional and to like hit those goals for you, and they're already nervous. So like, try to make it as friendly as you can and stuff. Also, like, just make sure though, with that positivity, you still deliver that feedback with candor, with honesty, and mutual respect. Very important. Visualize yourself on the other side of that feedback, on receiving that critique. Like, ask yourself, is my tone respectful? Would I like to be responded to like this? And then just a little reminder that, like, a little thing that I like to tell myself every once in a while is, honesty without kindness is cruelty, and kindness without honesty is manipulation. So we don't want either one of those, and they go hand in hand together.
Yes.
Also, when you're delivering your feedback, be very specific. Don't use general things like, I think this is weird, make it less weird. That is not helpful. Your version of what is weird is subjective, and only you know what that means.
Yeah. I actually had this challenge with something I had to give you feedback on a couple of days ago, where I was just like, there's something weird going on. The audio is bad. And I was like, okay, Michelle, all right, so let's define bad. What is bad? What's not working for you? And doing the work of really getting to the bottom of that. Like, your creative is not responsible for your communication. They're not responsible for interpreting smoke signals from across, a mountain divide. Like, you need to be specific, because if you're specific, then they can address those specific problems. But if you're not specific, then you're relying on them to try and interpret what's wrong for you. And especially if you've not done the pre-work of making sure that is not just about personal taste, and it's about what's effective for the project delivery, then they can't solve your personal taste issues.
No. And then also remember to diagnose the problems, but only prescribe. Oh my goodness. Solutions if you're asked. So I was thinking about this too. That's so important. But another thing that you could do, if you can tell that they're maybe a little overwhelmed with the feedback, or they're feeling like a little lost on how to come up with the solutions, you could offer how can I support you? And you can make it kind of specific. If I did this and this, would that help? Would that help with this at all? How, that kind of thing. If you do propose solutions, I would do it in an asking way, and asking them as if they're the authority on the design, and how you can.
Because they are.
Yeah, because they are. So
you had something that you came across the other day before we were formulating this. You told me something about hero leadership or something, where you show up with the solutions and then you're having a really hard time accepting anybody's version of the solution.
Yeah, I was learning. I watched this TED Talk, and now I don't have a reference for it, but maybe I'll look it up.
Was it Simon Sinek?
No, it was a lady. It was a lady who does stuff in corporate world, and she was talking about hero leadership and how it's really toxic. And it seems like a good idea. It's kind of a hero leadership.
Feels good when you're doing it.
You feel like a hero. You feel like you're saving people, and but really it's not good. And what a hero leadership is when you show up to a meeting and something, and you've got the problem and you've got the solution, and you've come up with it all by yourself. You've not included anybody else in on the problem solving of it. And you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, I'm saving all these guys time, by not burdening
it's really demoralizing.
Yeah.
I'm part of a team? This doesn't feel like a team.
Yeah. So what you do is you leave them on the outside when you come with all the solutions and stuff like that, instead of getting your team in on the ground and creating those solutions together. And another thing is with that, why it's so toxic is you end up assigning the solutions, to this goal, and your creative team and your team members in general, they don't have ownership of that goal and those solutions, because they weren't a part of creating it. It becomes your goal. They're serving you instead of the solution, because they weren't a part of, putting the plan together. So you really lose out on so many different areas, like enthusiasm, completion, innovation, initiative. You're not going to get any of that if you show up in a hero leadership mentality. So show up and be like, hey, we have to hit this goal. How do we do that, you guys? Let's deep dive in here. Even
if you think give them the opportunity to show you what you may have missed.
Yeah.
To show you something you may not have thought of. Because it can be really, when you set yourself in that mindset, it can be really fascinating to watch how your team solves problems.
Yeah. I also really like this next tip too. So talk through your criticisms in person. If you feel like they're taking it really hard, don't try to shame them and that they're not supposed to be taking that hard. Just try to be empathetic and help guide them into a more positive direction and a hopeful outlook and stuff. They may be a little too close to the design work, and it's got to change. There could be a lot of reasons. And then make sure you follow up that meeting in writing, in an email to go over, what was said and what the goals are, and reframing and stuff like that, because emotions are probably running really, really high. And when emotions are running really high, I feel like you can miss so much more things, your creative is probably not writing down all of the things that you're saying because they're, they're feeling kind of sensitive and stuff like that. So yeah, follow it back up in writing. You guys, you're a team together. You're trying to create these goals together and you're both like really, really valuable. So and then I like this one, but I really like this one because, I'm a creative and it's don't feel compelled to make changes. Your creative will love it if you don't make them change nothing. And so look for opportunities to not change their stuff.
I feel like that's, it really builds trust. It really builds trust. It's, especially you came into our business and you weren't sure how I was going to be as like a collaborative partner. And you were really just like unsure. And I could tell like if I did not get this right, you were not going to share your best ideas with me. And Among Lionhearts can't be Among Lionhearts unless you were going to share your best ideas with me. So there were times when I looked at something and I was like, I would really let this in. And then I was like, dude, does it need to? Can I just trust her? Should I just trust? I think if I trust her right now, and honestly, like doing that was so rewarding for me because we had discussions about the name of the company and I was really just trying to get over that hurdle because I've started other companies in the past and I didn't want to get stuck there because I've gotten stuck before. Yeah. So I was like, we just need to name this company and we were trying to keep it short. And, I was stuck on Lionheart something and
Lane. It was Lionheart Lane. Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys, it could have been named Lionheart Lane, just so you know. It's a little backstory.
And I told you that the thing I liked about that was similar to another idea you had in the past was that it felt like a place, right? It felt like a place you could belong
tangible. To. Yeah.
Yeah. It felt tangible. And you came back with Among Lionhearts. I hated it. Hated it. Yeah. But why did I hate it? Like, I don't know why I hated it. I just didn't like it at the time. And I looked at it and I went, I trust her. I am not the marketing professional. I am the operations professional. I'm a financial professional. I'm an operations professional. I trust her. And I went with it. And within a week, I loved it. Yeah. And I've been so happy about the reception that we get when we tell people that that's, our name. I had a telehealth appointment one day and forgot that like this was my background. And my doctor was like, Among Lion, what is that? Tell me all about that. And I absolutely love it. And I have so many of these little moments that I can go back to if I'm struggling with, finding the desire to do the work to give you enough information to get the project, to the goals that we need to both make, where I can go back to it and I can be like, you know what? I trusted her here and here and here, and it worked. And I really love having a partner that I can count on who doesn't let me down. And it doesn't mean we always agree. We certainly do not. No. This has tested our friendship in a lot of ways, but I really do think that don't feel compelled to make changes is like a top level challenge, but so worth it.
Yeah, it comes back in like tenfold and stuff. And sometimes the benefits of trusting your creative, unless you see something really glaringly like, that's going to come back to hurt your business, try to even just ask yourself, do we even need to make changes? So, yes. And then that kind of goes into like, just like, remember to respect your creative partner's vision and authority. Oftentimes creative people, especially, they don't think in words. They don't think in words. And sometimes it can be really hard as a creative to communicate why you solve things in the way that you did creatively, but that it solves things. Like I see in visuals, and I actually have like in my mind I have like little lines that connect things and stuff like that, and I see those, and so I know that they work and they solve those things. So it's often really hard to tell people how I know that it's going to solve that thing. It's very difficult. So And then in the, also when you're in the feedback situation, like, I don't know about other creatives, so I'm pretty sure it's close, but like my heart rate is high in a feedback situation. Like, and I struggle to think on my feet. I struggle to remember why I made that. I just know that I actually did think of that solution, and there is a reason for that I did it. And I'm really having a hard time communicating what it does, but it does work. So that's like, oftentimes what is happening with your creative too. So, trusting them, that they know what they're doing. Hopefully you've hired people, and you're working with people that get it, and deliver it and understand those things. So, trust them, trust them. They got your back. They want to win with you. They're just as determined to hit those goals as you are. So, and then I remember being a creative, it's just so incredibly vulnerable. Like Michelle said, it's, and a lot of other kind of work, there's a right way and a wrong way to do something, and it's like on repeat. And, there's one way to do it. There's one way you've been asked to do it. And that's just not the case for creative work. And it really does take a lot of trust and a lot of openness for your creative people to create the things that they do, and try new ways. And, if it's with writing, they're writing with their heart and stuff like that. And they're writing with a little bit of their personality in there, a little bit of like their background, like,
Yeah.
So yeah, just be gentle but honest, right? And, earning trust and giving trust, earning trust and giving trust. So as a person in management of creative people, you are always earning trust. Like you should be thinking of your relationship with your creative team is like, am I earning their trust? Like, why should they make these changes? Like, like have I earned their trust, and to earn that, you got to give it. So
I love the idea when it comes to this of social capital, and the reason I like it is I kind of envision it as like a bank account, right? And have I earned, did I make deposits this week in my social capital account that I can go make a withdrawal right now and somebody's going to trust me? If you've not built up the balance and you make a withdrawal, you might get overdrawn. And there can be bigger issues if you're having a lot of trouble with communicating with your creative team members, even if you're not their manager. A lot of times you should spend some time reflecting on whether you are effectively communicating your needs, because that can, when I don't consider myself a creative person, I do consider myself a little inclined to creativity, but I'm certainly like, my education's in accounting and finance and operations, and I'm very analytical. And I think that the tough part is when you enter that realm of creative work, like it just feels so foreign. It's not the numbers in the general ledger, and it just doesn't add up. And it's like, how do I communicate this? And oftentimes, instead of engaging with that lack of confidence, especially if you're a professional who's been in business for a long time and you're competent at your field, sometimes we can just automatically reject engaging with that discomfort. And I would say, like, if you're noticing that interacting with creative people in your business, whether it be creative members of your team, creative volunteers who come in, like, check yourself. Am I giving, enough information for them to give me what I'm asking for? Have I been kind and honest? And, have I built up that social capital to be able to ask them for what I'm asking? Because I just find that so often, Julia, I feel like the reason your heart races when you go to give somebody, turn your work in and get the feedback. Your heart races because you're always like generous enough to believe that, you know, whatever opinion comes out of that person's mouth is true, and your idea is not. You've been conditioned that way. Like that was the problem with, you know, all of the things in education being catered towards somebody with my disposition and not you. You know, I was great at memorization. I didn't have to study. I got aces on the test and I never turned in my homework. And not that I had fabulous grades, but I certainly saw you working so much harder than me and not getting any return for that. And I know that, you know, you were told your whole life that the way, you know, your talent wasn't important. And when you finally have worked your way through that professionalism to find your confidence in it, I know you still go to people with your project with that basic assumption that you've not done a good job and that it's not going to be right. You're just so prepared for that because it's happened so many times.
It's so easy for creative work to be looked at as wrong. Like it's just so endless. There's, you know, like you could have hit the mark 100% for one of the people you're designing for, you know, and then the other four, you know, decide it's wrong, but it's not wrong, right? Like it's different.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. And I think, you know, as a collaborator, I could totally lean into that and just like beat you up and get whatever I wanted out of you, but it wouldn't last very long. You would burn out pretty quickly.
I know. Yeah. Michelle and I have to be a little bit careful because she does have my heart. And so she has to be extra tender with me and stuff like that. And I appreciate her.
It's been an extra level of challenge. And I know that we're both very dedicated. Like you were looking up like successful, you know, women partnerships and what makes them successful and how did they do it? And you're having a hard time finding those that worked out. Like I am committed to being that success story that other girls and women can build on because like I would love that to be our relationship. And it's work. It's work.
Yeah.
It's rewarding and it's wonderful. And it's definitely the best decision I ever made, but it's still work.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking here at the end how like, the work that creatives do in nonprofits often are the stuff that your supporters are interacting with your company. You know, it's the heart of your company. It's, you know, the stuff that resonates with your supporters and stuff like that. And it's the human side of your company, and your soft, big-hearted human side of your nonprofit. It just cannot, it doesn't work the same as the numbers and the figures, right? Like, you know, it just doesn't work that way. It doesn't make sense that way. You can't come at supporters and expect them to connect with your organization by being cold numbers kind of organization. No, you need the creative bleeding hearts, you know, to represent.
And let's be honest, if you're working in nonprofit, you're probably pretty emotional bleeding heart.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
You got your heart in it. Like that's why you're here. Because everybody knows this work is not super glamorous all the time.
Yeah, you're most likely a whole team full of big softies and stuff like that. So all of these tips that we've talked about, they do work for about anyone, really.
Any business, right?
Yeah, but your creatives, like it's essential. Remember that it's completely essential to them. And if you want them thriving in your workplace, like make these extra accommodations. We know you can, because if you get a thriving creative person on your team who feels really fulfilled and safe, oh my gosh, the magic they're gonna make for you. Like
exactly.
You know, like you want that. You're gonna want that.
Yeah. We have one last tip in that realm of effective feedback techniques, and the last one is just projects can live or die based on that creative person's investment, creative energy, and morale. So be sure to prioritize your kudos as much as your critiques.
Yeah, I like that.
And now we're going to move into our podcast in a minute. For this episode of Rewarding Feedback Techniques for Creative Professionals, we're going to break down our usual 45-minute episode into a brisk 1-minute clip for your busy consuming pleasure. Take it away, Julia.
Creative work is a specialized form of work because of the subjective nature and emotional investments that generally come with producing creative results. Being intentional about designing an environment where creative professionals can do their best work will allow you to see your team thrive and inspire their love for the work to really shine through.
In order to give rewarding and effective feedback to your team, do take the time to evaluate your feedback ahead of time to ensure that it is addressing a specific functional need. If the feedback is critical, do make sure that you deliver it verbally, either in person or by phone. Do make sure you're in a curious mindset when you offer feedback so you can explore the professional expertise that led your team to their decisions. Do make sure to start with a piece of positive feedback. And lastly, deliver feedback with candor, honestly, and mutual respect.
Don't give feedback just for the sake of feedback. Don't neglect to follow up in writing. Don't offer solutions for the problem unless you are invited to. Don't give feedback at all unless you are in a supportive and inspirational mindset. Yes. And finally, don't forget to balance positive and negative feedback. If you find that you can't, there's probably a different issue to address. And that's podcast in a minute. If you liked those subjects, please listen to the full episode or watch the entire episode on YouTube. Michelle, who's our do-gooder feature of the month?
Our do-gooder feature of the month, this month is National Make a Difference for Children Month. So in honor of this, we are featuring One Nation Walking Together, an organization that serves the day-to-day needs of Native peoples in 8 states across the Western United States. Their focus is on striving to make a positive impact in the lives of Native Americans, a people who are greatly underserved and misrepresented. One Nation Walking Together is an organization about people helping people, not a cause. By addressing the specific needs of each community they serve, One Nation is able to be more than a dump and run charity. They deliver the basic necessities of life while uplifting the lives of the most impoverished people in our country. In serving their mission, they consistently fill 53-foot semi-trucks that deliver more than $1 million worth of donated goods to reservations each year. One Nation Walking Together provides hope and services for between 30 to 40,000 Native Americans in Colorado and 7 other surrounding states. We had the pleasure of interviewing their executive director, Kathy Terzi, in our July 1st episode. We do encourage you to cue that episode up so you can hear about all the amazing work they're doing, as well as some lessons learned that Kathy was generous enough to share. And don't forget to nominate a nonprofit to be featured. We feature a different nonprofit every month, and you can leave your recommendations or nominations in the comment. You can contact us on Facebook. You can drop us an email at hello@amonglionhearts.com, or just try and tag us on Messenger or Instagram, whatever way works for you. Let us know, because we love to share stories of amazing do-gooders.
Yeah. Our do-gooder hype up message for this episode is by Brene Brown. You guys know we are a fan. Vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. I just really love that, because nonprofit professionals are naturally innovative change makers who thrive at their best in an environment that is safe enough for them to be vulnerable in. And we encourage you to fiercely make and protect a safe place so that more of that do-gooder magic is produced.
Among Lionhearts is a socially conscious marketing agency where we specialize in social media management and influencer marketing for the unique needs of social enterprises and charities. Let our team of experts manage your social media workload for you so you can get back to doing more good. Remember, every small act of courage, no matter how small, is not actually small at all. You, my dear, are standing among Lionhearts.